before the nation knew his name, before the trials, the cameras, before the charm and the smile masked something far worse. There was just a boy, a quiet boy, watching, waiting. This is not the story of a killer. This is the story of the birth of a monster, the making of Ted Bundy. He was born Theodore Robert Cowell on a cold November night in 1946 in Burlington, Vermont. But even his birth was a lie. His mother, Eleanor Louise Cowell, was just 22 and unmarried, ashamed and terrified of judgment. She gave birth to Ted in a home for unwed mothers and pretended for years that she was his sister. Ted was raised to believe his grandparents were his parents and that his mother was someone else entirely. Secrets, deceit, a life built on lies, and in those lies, something twisted began to grow. As a child, Ted seemed normal, maybe even shy. He didn't cause trouble. He got decent grades. But there was something cold behind his eyes. As early as age 3, there were stories. Like the time a family member woke up to find little Ted standing at her bedside, smiling, surrounded by kitchen knives. He didn't laugh. He didn't explain. He just watched her, silent. When asked later, he said he just wanted to see what would happen. That was always Ted's game: control, observation, the ability to hurt without being seen. Growing up in Tacoma, Washington, Ted began to change. Or maybe the mask just started to slip. He would spy on women through their windows. He roamed the neighborhood at night. He stole, lied, manipulated, and got away with it all. No one suspected the bright, clean-cut boy. No one ever suspected Ted. That was his gift and his curse. By his teenage years, he became obsessed with crime. Not in the way boys read detective comics, but in a darker way. He read true crime stories with a hunger, particularly the ones with photos of mutilated bodies. Women, always women. He started collecting magazines with crime scene photos. Decapitated victims, cold, lifeless eyes. He would stare at them for hours, but it wasn't enough. Soon, he started following women, just walking behind them, watching them tense, smiling as they quickened their steps. He wasn't just fantasizing anymore. He was training. At the University of Washington, he studied psychology, and he used it not to heal but to hunt. He began to refine his image: confident, handsome, intelligent. He learned how to disarm people, how to play their emotions like a piano. He fell in love with a wealthy classmate, beautiful, elegant, from a well-off California family. She was everything he thought he deserved, but when she broke up with him, something snapped. Ted didn't just grieve, he obsessed. He needed control. He needed power. He started dating women who looked just like her: long, dark hair, parted down the middle. Then they started disappearing. One by one. 1974. Seattle, Linda Ann Hilly gone. Donna Gail Manson gone. Susan Rencourt gone. No blood, no evidence, no witnesses, just shadows. And silence. Sometimes, all they found were a few strands of hair, or a shoe. Other times, nothing at all. Police were baffled, but the monster, he was just getting started. Ted had perfected the act. He'd wear a sling or a fake cast, pretend to need help carrying books, loading a sailboat, reaching for keys. Women, raised to be kind, would lean in to help, and that's when the mask would drop, the charm would vanish, and the real Ted's thing beneath would strike. He would take them to remote woods or dark basements, and what he did there, even he struggled to explain. He once said he didn't know when to stop, that sometimes he'd return to the bodies days later, that he'd revisit them, talk to them, touch them. This wasn't murder. This was possession. He wasn't just taking lives, he was keeping them. Back in his apartment, there were no screams, no blood, just a man looking in the mirror, smiling, practicing his expression, perfecting the illusion. Every time he got away with it, he got bolder. He moved to Utah, then Colorado, then Florida. With each new state, The killings escalated. But what no one knew was that the monster had always been there, since the knives on the bed, since the lies about his mother, since the moment he realized, I can do anything and no one will stop me. Ted Bundy was not a madman in the shadows. He was the boy next door, the student, the law clerk, the volunteer at a suicide hotline. People trusted him. That was his camouflage. And as he sat in court, years later, with the cameras rolling, he smirked, joked, flirted, even proposed to a woman during his trial for murder. It wasn't about sex. It wasn't even about violence. It was about control, about being a god in a world full of sheep. But no god stays hidden forever. Eventually, he was caught. Not once, but twice. He escaped. Twice, and during his last escape, he struck again brutally. The Chi Omega sorority house in Florida, 4 women attacked in one night. 2 dead, a 12-year-old girl murdered days later. He didn't care anymore. He didn't need the mask. The monster had won. He was finally sentenced to death, but not before he gave chilling interviews. Cold, rambling insights into his depravity. He blamed pornography. He blamed bad influences, but he never blamed himself, because Ted Bundy never saw himself as the villain. He saw himself as the exception, the smartest man in the room, the shadow in the mirror. On January 24, 1989, the electric chair ended Ted Bundy's life. Crowds outside cheered. They sold t-shirts that read "Burn, Bundy burn," but deep down, the world knew it hadn't killed the monster. Because the real horror of Ted Bundy isn't that he existed, it's that he looked just like us. But what if Ted Bundy wasn't unique? What if he was just the first to be noticed? The first to smile on camera? The first to fool the system so completely that the world had to watch? Think about it. How many more are out there just like him? Men who know how to mimic empathy, who know what to say, how to act, when to look concerned. They don't need masks. They wear our faces. They walk beside us every day, in hallways, in parking garages, in elevators, in churches. That's what made Bundy terrifying. It wasn't the brutality of his crimes. It was the banality of the man. He didn't snarl. He didn't foam at the mouth. He smiled. He complimented you. He shook your hand, even as he planned to end your life. In his final interviews, he stared directly into the camera and spoke with chilling calm. He warned about the dangers of moral decay. He talked about society, about accountability, as if he had nothing to do with the horrors left in his wake. But you could see it in his eyes. Not guilt, not remorse, just calculation. Like a man watching the last moments of a game he never intended to win, only to play. Bundy once said, "We serial killers are your sons. We are your husbands. We are everywhere. And there will be more of your children dead tomorrow." He wasn't confessing. He was promising. You see, monsters like Ted don't crawl out from caves or emerge from the fog. They're raised in homes with neat lawns. They sit in classrooms. They date. They vote. They blend in until they don't. And by then, it's already too late. So the question isn't how could Ted Bundy exist? The question is, how many more are hiding behind smiles today? You won't see them coming. You won't hear the footsteps, because they're not in horror movies. They're in your office, your school, your neighborhood. They know your routines, your fears, your kindness, and they know that when the time comes, you'll hold the door open for them. He didn't die in the electric chair. He just changed his face. Monsters aren't born in the dark. They're born in daylight. And they smile.